My guest today on Inside the Professor's Study is Dr. Robin Snipes, Professor of Management in the D. Abbott Toner College of Business. Dr. Snipes earned a bachelor's and a master's degree in business administration from CSU and a PhD in human resource management from Auburn University. We begin our conversation by talking about Robin's disciplinary expertise in organizational behavior and customer satisfaction.
Today on Inside the Professor's Study, my guest is Dr. Robin Snipes, and she's Professor of Management. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
You're welcome, Susan. Yeah, anytime, sure.
Well, so you are the first guest we've had on the program from the College of Business and Computer Science.
Oh, woo.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of excited to hear about your path into academia, because your field is a professional field, and sometimes involves kind of interesting detours into the workplace, and kind of an interesting decision-making point about whether you're going to continue practicing in the workplace or get into the classroom. And so, can you tell me a little bit about how you found your way into academe?
Well, and I will have to say it was a little bit by accident. I had a professor, and I actually graduated from Columbus State University, and I had a marketing professor who, when I was a senior, tried to talk me into going to get a PhD. And so I guess he saw something there, and at the time, being only 22 and learning about what all was going on in business, I wanted to go do it. I thought I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to get in there, and I thought it would be really, really exciting to do it. And I couldn't picture myself as a teacher. I didn't picture myself that way. And so I worked in private industry for a while, and I did a lot of traveling, and I really enjoyed it. But when I got into my late 20s, I found myself leaving Columbus, leaving my home on Mondays and not getting back into town until Fridays. And at that point in time, I thought, well, I might want to have kids, and all the traveling that I was doing, it just wouldn't really work out in my personal life. And so I started looking at different career choices to try to give me the work-life balance, and decided to go back to school. And I think I enjoyed school more than the first time around.
Yeah.
And then once I started teaching, I realized how much I loved it, and I haven't had any regrets since. And that was 20 years ago. That's been a long time.
Yeah, that's great. So you joined the faculty in 95, is that
in
right?
95, that's right.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of changes at Columbus State. I think when we first started here, when I first started here, it was 4,500 students, just to give you an idea. And now we have, I think, close to 8,300.
So about twice as many, almost.
Yeah. So a lot of good changes. Most of them good, and some of them I think, I don't get to have as much student interaction because our classes have gotten bigger, but that's sort of the growing pains process of it.
Right.
But most of it's just been, just incredible, the changes that have taken place here. So
yeah. Well, I want to talk more about that in a minute. But I was really interested by some of the research that you've done, and your field. Your PhD is in human resources management, right? Which I think is so fascinating, and also relevant to teaching, in that you're dealing with human resources in some ways all the time,
managing classes,
managing your class, and helping the human beings who are in it to maximize their experience, their human capital.
Yeah, it's a very applied field. So we talk a lot about psychology, the management, psychology of management. and what motivates people to do the things that they do. And I love that part of the class. But then we also apply it to the workplace, you know. So when you talk about Herzberg's theory or Maslow's theory, then how do we actually apply that in our management techniques so that people are, we now know, have a lot of research on the correlation between job satisfaction and customer satisfaction, for example. And when we talk about customer satisfaction, for-profit companies know that that's what increases their profits. So now you have their attention. You know, so there are a lot of things we talk about in the class that you could also relate to your personal life as well. How do you motivate your kids to do well in school, you know? So it's a lot of fun to talk about those topics. That's one of my favorite classes, actually.
Well, it sounds, you know, really pertinent to many things. It actually surprised me to see that one of the articles that you've published and have received recognition for, an award for, has to do with fear. And using fear as a motivating factor. And I thought, this doesn't sound like Robin to me. It's something like, don't be afraid to use fear. Tell me more about that.
I can't believe you read. That was back in the early 90s. I did a study as a PhD student.
Oh, okay.
And we actually collected data. We were in a mall. And we collected data, it's called a mall intercept study, where you just ask passerbys if you will participate in this study, we'll give you a small stipend. And it just involved watching 2 different videos. And the product in the video was a security product, home security product. And one of them used a fear pill and the other one didn't. And when we compared the level of interest in the product after the 2 videos, we found that the fear pill worked better.
Right.
But any emotional pill. The article was about any emotional pill, and it could be humor. It could be, you know, feelings of love. You know, any kind of emotional attachment that you can make with the customer, that tends to work better than just the bland, this is what we do, buy us, you know, so that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, okay, so I feel better now. It's not that fear works in every situation. But also, I think, again, I mean, that is one of the things that I've learned in doing research on teaching methods that is so effective in the classroom as well, is that you have to have some sort of emotional connection to the material or the I don't know, and mainly the material, I suppose, but or maybe the community of learners that you're involved with in learning about that material.
And I will have to say, as a classroom management technique, I wouldn't recommend using fear. I think it might motivate. But I think it also creates a block, especially, you know, like the stress that students feel right before they take a test, so they don't perform as well. You know, so, but for advertising, we all know, you got to get them, you got to tug at their hearts or find an emotion that you can connect with them, and it does create more attention and tends to increase the ad memorability and things like that. So that was an interesting study. That was I can't tell you the number of hours I spent in the mall doing that. And you know, I made a little extra money on the side, but I spent 3 times as much, because when you're working in the mall, then you see all the new shoes or things that are coming out, and you got to go, you know. So
that's really funny.
That's not good for a doctoral student because you're on a budget.
So,
well,
that's so funny. Well, I didn't realize it was an older study that you had done. Another one that I saw had to do with gender bias.
I've done several studies on that as well. And the study I did in that case was gender sex role stereotyping in fact, I'm going to revisit that study, because that was done, that one was done about almost 20 years ago. So I'm going to look at it, the new generation, to see if we still have a significant effect. But what we did in that one, we took 2 different applicants, and they both had the exact same resume, but one was clearly a male, one was clearly a female. and it was a 2x2 design, meaning we had 4 different variables we were looking at, not just gender, male versus female, but also the sexual stereotyping of the job itself. So whether it was a male-oriented job like an engineer or a female-oriented job like a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
So we looked at, from the human resource manager's point of view, would they be biased in terms of trying to fit the gender of the applicant to the gender of the job.
Right, right.
And we found that 20 years ago there was still a significant effect there, meaning a strong percentage of their decision was based on the gender of the applicant and trying to match it with the sexual stereotype of the job.
Yeah.
I think it's changed quite a bit.
Do you?
And I think it has. And so I want to revisit that study, bring it back out and do another study, just replicate it now 20 years later and see if we still find the same effects. That would be really interesting to do that. In fact, I'm just about to collect the data on that too.
Yeah.
So,
it
so you're bringing up all these memories. So
That's
it's
good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, so I would imagine for you, there's a pretty nice opportunity to be able to share some of your research work in your classroom with students.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because it's not so separate from what you're learning in class.
They give me so many ideas. Usually my research ideas come from a question that's asked in class that you think, well, I don't think there's been any really good research to answer that, accurately. Here's what I think is happening. That's just based on my own personal experiences. And so I get a lot of ideas. In fact, if you walk into my office, you'll see all these stick-it notes on my on my desk. Things that I'm trying to work on. And usually, my problem is I have all these ideas, but it's just picking one and finishing it. So,
well, that brings up a really interesting problem that I think we all face, which is how to prioritize.
Oh gosh.
I mean, how have you? And at this point, you're a full professor, and so over the years, how have you managed to choose wisely what you want to spend your time and energy pursuing, because we always have more things we could be doing than we have time. It's hard.
That's the.
I mean, not like anyone has the answer, but.
I think for me it's a constant balancing act, but it's a little bit easier here at Columbus State because they sort of tell you, look, the most important thing is being a good teacher. You have to be a good teacher, so that's always first priority. But then the difficult part is balancing your service with your research activity. And then the nice thing about being tenured is then you can kind of choose which service activities that you have an interest in, and then which research projects you have an interest in. So it makes it a little bit easier, but as an untenured faculty going through that process, I think they have probably the most difficult time because they're just trying to get everything done. And a lot of times it's more difficult for them to say, look, my plate's full, I can't do that right now. And the research gets pushed to the side and they end up doing that on the weekends and it cuts into their personal life, so it's more difficult then, but as a full professor you can kind of say, look, I have an interest in doing this, the strategic plan or QEP and things like that I really enjoy doing.
Right. And it takes a certain amount of institutional experience to know where you feel you can make the best contribution. I mean, I would say for me, coming out of graduate school, I not only accepted all sorts of service requests because I felt like I had to, but I really didn't know what I might like or not like. So there's a certain amount of that I guess, it's a learning curve. And
sometimes you get stuck on a committee, it's hard to get off. I know you've had those too, where you think, oh, now I realize, no, I no one wanted to be on this committee. But it's hard to make the transition to someone else. So you're on it for a little while.
It's true. And, I think one of the things that maybe all of us could stand to, I don't know, just reflect on regularly is how much ownership we feel we really have over, what we're doing on campus and why. And what, really, ideally, no one should ever be on a committee because they just feel like they have to put that line on their service commitment.
Right.
That person is unlikely to really make any great contribution to the committee anyway.
That's exactly right.
Be there because you want to be there and you care about whatever it is.
Sure, I completely agree with that. That would be, and it's true that there, always you have few people in every department who want to do service, and you have some. I think it should be the faculty member who decides, I'd rather do research and let that person focus more on research, and there are others who want to do service. They like the service part of it, so but it's a constant balancing act, and I never really feel balanced, especially this time of the year. As you know, this is when a lot of things are due, so
yes. Yeah.
So I don't really know if I'm the best person to ask, but I think that it's like one of those things you always strive for at the beginning of every academic year. You think this year.
Yeah. So, isn't that true? You've got a relatively clean slate at the beginning, and there's some hope that it
won't be quite as chaotic towards the end.
Well, so what are some of the courses that you typically teach in a given year?
I usually teach, the two main courses I teach are a course called Organizational Behavior, and that's the psychology of management. And then I teach another course called Business Strategy. It's the capstone course in the College of Business. And that probably is my favorite course because I get to see all the business majors, not just the management majors in that one. And we do projects, and there are a lot of hands-on experiences, so I really get to know the students before they make the transition, out into the real world, and or go to graduate school. I was just talking to one of our best students. I was really excited on the way over here because she had told me she wanted to teach college, and I hope we can get her back here, Columbus State, because she would be absolutely wonderful. And so those kinds of experiences you get in a capstone course as they're leaving CSU, and hopefully can make some connections and keep up with them. And see them along their career. And I run into my students from time to time, out in the ones who stay here in Columbus, you see them everywhere out in Columbus. So it's a great experience. It's one of my favorite courses. But I also teach a couple of graduate courses, and they're the same courses on the graduate level. I've taught human resource management. We all have taught the principles of management, which is the first course you teach in management. So those would be the main ones that I've taught.
Well, that's it's an interesting balance, I guess, between some of the intro level things and then the capstone and the graduate level things.
I think probably the principles is harder than the capstone for me.
Oh, how so?
Well, again, you get all the majors. All the majors have to take principles of management. But you have a good percentage of them who have decided management's not going to be their thing. Whereas the capstone course, it's a course that combines everything we've learned in the College of Business, so it's something they need to know. And we talk about that a lot in the class. It's like, look, if you're a business major, they're going to expect you to know this. This is something you need to know. So it's for all majors. And so you have their attention at that point. Whereas when they're principals, they're still beginning juniors, and they're like, oh, a lot of them haven't worked much, so they can't really relate what we're saying to their own work experience, So, it's harder to teach principals, I think. That's one of the hardest.
That makes sense. Well, now you have lived through the whole accreditation by the CSB, which was an enormous undertaking. I don't know too much about, what kinds of fundamental things, you do differently now than you did before Is it possible to explain that a little bit?
There were several requirements AACSB had that were different than what we had before. One was they expect a higher level of research from the faculty. The faculty have to be what they call academically qualified, which means not only that you have a PhD, but that you stay current in your field. And that means you have to have published in the last year, and you have to have a certain number of journal publications over the last 5 years. So that took a while for us to transition to, because we were mainly teaching college at that time. It was teaching college, and very few of our faculty had kept doing research. After they finished their dissertation, it was mainly about teaching then.
In this next part of our conversation, Robin and I talk about the many efforts of she and her colleagues over many years as they worked towards earning accreditation.
So it was a huge transition. That was probably the biggest one. And then secondly, it's all about continuous improvement. They have huge continuous improvement push, which means that we have to measure, we have to assess everything we do. And then if we find things that aren't working as well as they should based on our mission, we have to implement strategies to improve it, So that was a huge undertaking for us to implement that whole process, the whole continuous improvement process. And even though SACS, the regional accreditation that university has, requires some of that, it's the level of intensity the AACSB has, and the report writing and all the things that you have to do to prove that you're doing it is a lot more intense. So as you know, it took us, from the point we started the initial accreditation, and I wasn't here when they started the initial one, but I came here, I was at the tail end of it. It took us a total of about 15 years to do that. You know. So, and I came in in 95, and our initial accreditation was 2002, I believe.
Yeah, that seems about
2002, 2004, somewhere around there.
Early 2000s.
So we've just gone through our second review, and they go every 5 years. So you have to go through another review. So I was at the last 5 or 7 years of it, experiencing that. And it was really, really intense. And we were very focused, and I would say that was one of the happiest days of my life here at CSU, the day we found out that we had passed.
Wow.
And there was a lot of, confetti, and we're running down the halls and, hooting and hollering, and it was really, it was a great moment. It was a great moment when we found that, because the last couple of years leading up to it, it was real intense effort by all the faculty. So
gosh, so everyone was really, invested. At that point, we said we're in it, and we're not giving up. We're going for the gold. And I think you've seen the statistics. At that point in time, only about 25 or 26% of all colleges of business across the United States had it. At this point now, I think it's increased to about 30% of all colleges of business have AACSB accreditation. So it put us in the top, tier of the business schools. Yeah. Well, it's clear that it's not only, a really significant recognition among all other business schools in the country, but that the teeth in it are very real, because, I've been in many meetings where the representative from the College of Business says, well, we're going to have to do this, or we have no ability to cut back on whatever it is.
They have very specific standards, because they come back every you have to submit a report every year, but then every 5 years they send a team of deans, business deans, who look at whatever they want to look at. I mean, they look at all your records, your files, you know, how you hired faculty, how you promoted them, how you treat students. They interview our students. They come into our classrooms randomly, and we'll interview our students and ask them, did you learn these things? You know, how were you treated? You know, so all those things. It's just sort of like having an IRS audit, I think.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I have never been through one.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, really.
But I would imagine that's what it must be like.
Right. Wow. Well, so I can imagine in general, I mean, as much time as it takes for everyone to invest in, you know, preparing for the visit and making sure that you've done all your assessments and things, that there's that as its downside, but that you do feel really good about what you've accomplished afterwards.
Well, and it's a good thing for our students because the value of their degree goes up, and if they want to apply to any graduate school, that's one of the questions that the graduate schools will ask is, did your degree come from an accredited business school? You know, so it could help them get into a better graduate school because of that, you know. So.
Well, on the subject of helping students to, you know, be well prepared for exciting opportunities in the future, you have just recently done a study abroad program in Spain.
Yes.
And so I am interested to hear a little bit more about what you did and how you think the students who were in that program might benefit in the future, or you know.
Oh, it was a fantastic program. I will tell you, we were so busy. The way we do our study abroad, it's always during what we call Maymester term, which is a 3-week term in May. And
this was a CSU program?
This was a CSU program.
Okay.
And the reason why we do it that way is we have probably about 80% of our students by the time they're seniors are working. So they usually can get 2 weeks off from work to do this. We meet in class for a week before we leave for the trip, and then we go on the trip. While we're on the trip, we visit businesses and we find out what's different, you know, how they do business differently. We also learn a lot about the culture, and we do historical site visits and things like that as well. And we're really busy. The whole trip we're busy. But it's also one of those kind of, you're busy but you're having fun too. You know, it's a great learning experience. For me, it was a fantastic experience because I think it's one of those times where I discovered just how much I love our students, because they are hardworking. A lot of times, you know, as professors, we complain about the level of effort they put into the class, but you realize they have so much going on. Many of them are doing, you know, extracurricular things. They're involved in student organizations and leadership roles, and they're working, and they have a lot of plans, and so they're really good people. And so it's one of those things where it gives you the feeling, I'm so glad to be here, you know, and be doing this kind of thing. And I'm really excited to tell you about the next trip that I'm planning. Just turned in my...
Because you were in Madrid last year.
I was in Madrid last year. We're planning a trip. Now this year we're going to Costa Rica. I'm not going on that one, but next year we're planning to go to Ireland.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And it's going to be a fantastic trip. I just turned in the course proposal, which is where you have to actually already have pretty much the whole schedule worked out. And went on the site visit a couple of weeks ago over spring break. And made a lot of connections there. And that's going to be another great trip. I really didn't realize just how much the business relationships between the United States and Ireland has grown over the last 5 years. But the amount of foreign direct investment the United States has in Ireland now has increased so much in the last 5 years, more so than the entire 50 years before that.
No kidding.
Yeah, and they're right
And
now.
that's sort of after the Celtic Tiger.
Yeah, this is post 2008, and right now, as far as our trading partners, they're number 5, and they have 4.5 million people.
Wow.
You know, not 1.3 billion. It's 4.5 million people.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're hugely important to American businesses, and I didn't realize how much so until I started doing all the research on it. You know, so it's going to be a fantastic learning experience.
Sounds great. Well, we've got a lot going on with Ireland. The nurses are
yes,
going to
that's
Ireland.
right. Yeah.
In fact, were they just there, or they're going in
They
May?
well, they went over spring break as well.
Yeah,
they were over there in spring break.
Right.
But we have a wonderful partner institution there, Waterford Institute.
Yes.
They have a very active international education department.
Yeah.
A lot of good folks there who've helped us a lot, and they're aggressively pursuing international education. So
Right.
they've been very helpful for me as well, getting the program set up.
That's great.
And our students will be part of the time staying in the dorms there as well.
Yeah.
You know, so Waterford is a really cute little town.
It is a cute town.
Yeah.
I've been there, and I think it's a nice place for our students in particular because it's pretty manageable. You can walk, you know, walk in from the campus to the town. But because Ireland is so compact in general, the field, you know, when you do field trips, you can go pretty much anywhere in the country. So
that's right. Yeah.
So it's a great partnership, and the people are super nice.
Oh,
You
know, I think I was trying to count. I think I've been to, you know, including the Caribbean and places like that. I think I've been to about 20 different countries, and to me, that's the friendliest country.
Wow.
I think out of all the places that I've been. You know, it's just the people are so accommodating, so friendly. You feel welcome.
Yeah.
I think for a student who's never traveled abroad, that will be a good introductory place to start.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, so we're also really honored, I think, recently at CSU to have been recognized in this Paul Simon Award for Internationalization.
I know.
It's a big deal.
And it's Neil McCrillis, too. He's done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
He has just, his level of energy is incredible.
Yeah.
So he's done a lot of good things.
Well, my understanding is that we're going to have some more, you know, sort of celebratory announcements about it. As it sort of sinks in what a game changer this could be.
Sure.
But because the other institutions who won the comprehensive award with us were, I think it was NC State, Rutgers, and Ohio State.
Wow.
I might be mistaken about one of those, but clearly, you know,
bigger institutions.
right? We're not the sort of comprehensive research universities that those are, and yet we've managed to equal their commitment to internationalization, and it seems to me like it could potentially, you know, affect the identity of CSU for a long time.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I know. And as you know, that's one of the things we're pushing for in the strategic plan.
Yes.
It's always been a big part of it, but we'd like to also get more international students here at Columbus State and make sure our students have that experience abroad. And we talk a lot about, you asked about the value of going abroad. And we had a guest speaker not too long ago come to talk to us from W.C. Bradley, and that question was asked of him: how important is it that our students study abroad? And he said, I would say, put it up there, one of the top criteria. I think that they should have some international experience. So if they haven't had that experience traveling earlier in life, and then now's a good time to do that, because like I tell my students when I'm trying to sell the idea on the course is that it's such a great deal. It's such a great, what all you get for what you're paying is such a great value. I don't know if you ever will get a value like this again in your life, so take advantage of it. You know. So.
Well, and it's, I think the academic component to that travel is what makes it feel kind of irreplaceable by whatever personal travel you might imagine you'll take in the future. You know, I mean, if you visit another country as a working person, as, you know, a vacation, your opportunity to, I think, be, you know, really involved in seriously studying some element of that culture or their history or their, you know, arts or their business practices. I mean, it's unlikely you'd really undertake that on your own.
It changes your experience too, like you said, when you have people who are experts there in the country telling you this is why we do it this way and this is the significance of this historical site. You know, otherwise you could read about it, but to have someone there who is right there all the time makes it a completely different, you know, experience.
It really does. Yeah, and like you said about making great network connections, I mean, that's good for our students in all kinds of ways that, you know, may go far into the future. I mean, we're establishing relationships with people in places where our students could end up someday.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. We have a lot of American expatriates working in Ireland, you know, for example.
Yeah.
I've even had a few students, graduate students, approach me and say, you know, I think I would like to work in Ireland. You know, so those kind of things, you make, like you said, you make connections. It's a small world these days. So,
increasingly. Yeah.
In the last part of our conversation, Robin and I talk about her expertise in strategic management and our recent experience in developing CSU's strategic plan.
Well, so on the subject of the strategic plan, because you and I have spent a lot of time over the last couple of years being a part of that team and seeing it all the way through to its beautiful finished product, which we had nothing to do with the look of the actual
brochure.
paper brochure, but it was a big surprise.
Yeah,
wow,
it was
look
for
at
me
that.
too. I know. It's really nice though. I like the way
It
they
was.
especially put the pictures and all.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you were, I think, particularly leaned on to be a part of that effort because strategic planning is part of your expertise.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be interesting maybe to hear more from your perspective as an expert, and if you could step back from our process about, you know, how well you think we managed, and did we do the things we needed to do, and how it, you know, did we get it done in the time frame we should have, and I mean, what's been your reflection on that process?
I think the whole planning process is time consuming, and we're all on the committee. It's a service activity for us. I think initially we had tried to get the strategic plan out in a little less time than what it took, but the previous strategic plan took twice as much time. So we're getting it down now where it's a more efficient process. But anytime you're dealing with a committee of, I think it was, 20 or 24 people on the committee, it's going to take a little bit longer to get a consensus. As committees go, I think this one clicked pretty well, and we had a lot of really good input from many different perspectives, which is what you want on a strategic planning committee. You want to make sure that not everybody thinks alike, and we definitely had different perspectives on the committee. But I'm very proud of the product that was done, and it was the combined effort of everybody's input on it. You were huge on that. You and Cindy Cindy Tickner was really a big part of it as well, and so was Neil McCrillis, and so a lot of people worked really hard on the strategic plan. I'm proud of the direction that we're taking, which is we're going more to now we've decided our identity is going to be more of a traditional college campus, and because we're a really new university, relatively speaking, this is sort of a transitional thing that we continue, and I think we've made some progress already, don't you, on that?
Yeah, so. To me, the I guess the surprise of having identified those goals and put them into writing has been how much that very step is halfway to seeing it come to fruition. I mean, until you take the time to consciously think about exactly where you want to go and put it down in writing, nothing's going to happen. But then somehow it enters conversations and enters everybody's mind that we've articulated this particular thing about wanting to be a first choice institution for the students who come here, wanting students who are not only well prepared but who have the motivation to complete a degree. And the choosing, what I enjoyed, I guess, about the process is that words matter.
Words do matter.
And it was fun. And we had
especially the mission statement when we were developing that. And I tell everybody, I said every word, believe me, was carefully chosen because we knew that it would be repeated so often. And that finally develops a mindset. This is what we need to do. This is who we should be.
One of the conversations that I still laugh about had to do with our being of best value.
I know.
Because in our surveys and all of the data collection, we recognize that we are a really affordable school in terms of the state system and even outside of the state, and that's surely an important selling point. On the other hand, as somebody pointed out, using the word cheap in your mission is somehow feels like not quite the right thing to stress, and so it was just a funny, it was one of those days when we had a lot of laughs trying to figure out how you could, help people to recognize that as a strength without it eroding some perceived, perception of what you have to offer.
And really, truly, I think maybe even just 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't be having that conversation. But because now cost of higher education has gone up so much from the student standpoint, now they're talking about it. And the big concern we have was, because it's one of those perceived threats in higher education, is that will people continue to see this as a good value? We don't like to talk about education in terms of return on investment because there are so many other benefits to it. It changes your life and your perspective and how you look at things. But that is the way a good majority of college students are looking at it today. Is it the right way for me to spend my energy? Is it a good value for me?
Right.
So unfortunately, with the dynamics we have now, with federal and state funding eroding and pushing the costs down more and more to students, it's one of those conversations that
Yeah.
I know. And we talk a lot about the difference in our class about low cost versus best value, because that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
And remember, we said we're not the Walmart. That's not what we're trying to be.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some hard conversations, really.
But it is. I know exactly. It's sort of it feels silly when you're talking about it, doesn't it? It feels.
Yeah. Well, so aside from the strategic plan language that anybody could go online and see for themselves, that you've already shared, feeling proud about.
Yeah.
Are there particular? I know from conversations with you what some of your special passions are, but could you say more about, for example, how important it might be to say invest in main campus while we've been expanding the beautiful River Park facilities at the same time, and how to balance that?
Right. One of the things we had, as you know, a lot of discussions about in the whole strategic planning process is what we want to accomplish with the main campus. And mainly from the student's perspective, what is a first choice institution? And it involves having student activities and engagement opportunities on both campuses. And the challenge that, as you know, we have at CSU is we have 2 campuses. And there are a lot of things that go into managing the downtown campus. That's duplication of what we're doing on the main campus. So we had the discussion of, in terms of allocating resources, where do we allocate them? And our students basically said the main campus has got the activities. They have the restaurants and
the River Park campus.
The River Park campus has the activities. Not the same main campus. I meant the River Park campus has them, but our main campus was lacking in that area. And so I knew that there had already been some talk and some plans in place for the main campus, and that was kind of the focus of our discussions was, we really want to put the primary emphasis on the main campus to make sure that students feel that they're getting a traditional college campus experience when they come here, because there are a good percentage of our students that take classes on the main campus and may very seldom, if any, go to the downtown campus to take any classes. So their entire college experience just about would be on the main campus. So we need to make sure that they feel like they have the same number of activities, things to do, that any student at a traditional college campus would have.
Right.
Yeah.
And physical spaces really matter. I mean, I think one of the surprises to a lot of us about the renovations in the library have been how much more of a desirable spot it's become for students to hang out in. It's become a real hub of not just social activity, but academic activity.
I was
and
surprised.
How wonderful!
I was surprised last time I was in the library just how active it is. It really is active. It's changed so much from just 5 years ago.
Yeah. And if that very mid-century concrete kind of architecture can be transformed into a cool space, there's hope for Howard Hall.
That's right. Yeah, I can't wait to see that. That's really exciting that's we're undertaking that now.
It really
it's happening.
is.
So
I've spent a lot of my past 14 years in Howard Hall, and so that to me feels like one of the anchor buildings on campus that if it can be transformed in how it feels, and there's going to be big kind of lobby open space now on the pathway through to the courtyard and to the quad for students to hang out. That's going to make a huge difference.
It will. It definitely will.
Yeah.
And I think I was just talking with someone about this the other day. There's a point at which, you feel it takes a long time to make some change. There's a point at which the change almost snowballs and it speeds up. And I think we've been at that point now for a couple of years. So you see a lot of changes going on downtown that's based off of the CSU investments.
Yeah.
And so other retailers and other investments are going on downtown. And I think the same thing will happen here on the main campus as well.
Yeah. Well, so lots of exciting things ahead for us at the university.
Sure, it's a good time to be here.
It is a good time to be here. Yeah. Do you have any, I don't know, specific visions for things you'd like to see happen 5 to 10 years from now? Like that I don't know, speak to your particular hopes?
Yeah, I really think that if we can transform the main campus to be more of a destination campus, that's going to be huge to be able to do that. That's one thing. And the other thing is we have a very diverse student group, as you know. It would be nice to see the international part of that continue to grow, as we talked about.
Yeah.
And not only we've increased our study abroad just tremendously, but to get international students here at Columbus State, in bigger numbers, would be really good, because then you get the different perspectives and the cultural experiences that students can have as well.
It's true. I know. I have to say I'm embarrassed never to have attended one of these myself, but the global dialogues sessions that the CIE leads, where there's small groups of students who are given topics, and they're pretty controversial topics sometimes, having to do with family life and I don't know,
the treatment of women.
Yeah, all
like
kinds
that.
of different social and problems and cultural things that the students are mixed together with an international student, or at least one of them, or a couple of them at each table, and they have conversations about how things are done in this other country where the student is from. And every time I have offered students an opportunity to attend those, and I think, I don't know how they manage to pull off those global dialogues without people getting upset or angry or starting fights. The students always come back and say, that was really cool. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun.
It's a great experience. Yeah, it sure is. A lot of the things they do there at the International Day, when they have different cultural experiences and the films they have, I think it's going to happen, and it's already happened somewhat. We've increased our international student enrollment a little bit, but again, it's at some point it will increase, and it's just students going back to their home countries and recruiting other students, and you get the huge benefit that way as well. So
that's right.
I'd love to see that happen too, and I think the more we can move towards, and it's a growth process, but the more we can move towards a traditional college campus, then we already have so many good things in place. The word's just not out everywhere. We know about them, but we just have to get the word out about it.
Right.
So
well, okay. So I really only have a final wrap-up question for you. From the global to the local.
Okay.
Because you're a CSU alum and you've been in Columbus for a long time, and so what would you say is a best kept secret about our town?
The best kept secret about our town? Well, I don't know if it's a secret anymore, though. I think it's just a really pleasant place to live. It's a pleasant place to live, and it's pleasant because the people are friendly, because we don't have to deal with traffic issues, because we have so many activities. We have a vibrant downtown that continues to grow. We have a lot of things going on, and I think maybe it is a secret to a lot of folks outside of Georgia. I don't think it's a secret to people in Georgia anymore.
Yeah.
But not too long ago, I'm trying to remember the exact year. I think it's been like 3 or 4 years. It was voted one of the top 5 places to raise a family.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Was that USA Today? Am I quoting that right?
I
It was
can't
one of
remember
the
what the
publications.
publication was, but it was a big one.
And yeah. And so to be a relatively small city, we have like, what, 250,000 people here, 300,000,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. It's huge
Yeah.
to say that, you know. So I think just the livability of the city is something that most people outside the city don't know.
Right.
Don't know.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's a great place to live.
Yeah.
And work.
Oh yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. Thanks for inviting me.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.